Noted.
Well, they have a refugee, they work with immigrants in a program called Reestablishment.
This is one.
All right, good evening, everyone, both in person and online. My name is Kelly, and I serve as one of the associates here at St. Paul's, and we're so glad that you are joining us. This is our Faith and Culture Conversations, our December edition, and this was a series that we began in 2020 during the pandemic as a way to address critical issues through the lens of faith and culture. So today I'm really excited for our topic, but I first want to introduce our two co-facilitators. So we have Dave Coogan, who is an associate professor of English at VCU. And then we also have Christine Lakritz-Marquis, who is an associate professor of church history at Union Presbyterian Seminary. Both are parishioners here at St. Paul's, and we're just so grateful for their willingness to participate in facilitating these conversations. I also just want to note too, we have a little bit of a higher attendance virtually because we're seeing a little bit of some viruses spike after Thanksgiving, but we're grateful for this hybrid opportunity to be able to still participate. So I will pass things over to Christine.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. So it's my profound pleasure to introduce to you all tonight Erica Sims. She is the CEO at the Maggie Community Land Trust. She's worked in nonprofit management, affordable housing development, and community organizing fields for over 18 years. Her focus has been social and economic justice through housing and economic development. Ms. Sims has held private sector, nonprofit, and government roles and has overseen the development of over 2,500 units of affordable housing and 50,000 square feet of commercial development space in new construction and renovation projects. Prior to joining the Maggie Walker Community Land Trust in 2017, she was the Deputy Executive Director of Mutual Housing Association of New York, a nonprofit affordable housing developer, owner, and manager with a portfolio of over 1,500 units of affordable housing. She received a bachelor's in economics and a bachelor's in urban planning from the University of Michigan, yes, and a master of business administration from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So please join me in welcoming Erica.
All right. Well, Erica, we like to begin these conversations with just an opening about faith. So can you tell us what you know about faith and how you came to know it?
Yeah, so I I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist Church over on Blandon Street in Richmond, and I spend a lot of time thinking about my faith in the context of social justice and social activism. That's what has attracted me to that faith tradition. It's been an opportunity for me to do work within the community other than housing work. But I also, there are a lot of intersections between my work in affordable housing and faith. I think for me, I came into the work thinking about real estate development is a very technical field. It's about finance, it's about construction, it's about land use and architects. And I thought I would develop as a technocrat, and I would become very technical in this work, and that would be how I would contribute to additional affordable housing. But I think over time, I think my belief systems have kind of merged with my work in a broader way to help me kind of think about my faith in the context of the work that I'm doing.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask you another question, but I realize we should remind you guys that you're welcome to chime in with questions as we go. So this is not just us performing a conversation for you, but please join in. So I want to ask you sort of a follow-up as you're talking about this evolution between your career as you imagined it and your career in relationship to your faith as it's sort of developed. And can you share with us, have there ever been times that you struggled to reconcile your faith with some of your new experiences in your work, or was it this very obvious sort of?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that one of the ways I contextualize my work now is in a belief that really appeals to me, described within my faith tradition as widening the circle of concern.
Yeah.
And it's a concept that I think through as a way to continue to think more deeply about others and the needs of others and the inclusion of others in the decisions that we make, the power and control that exists within various spheres. And so I think that concept really resonates with me because in affordable housing in particular, it can be very difficult to address the many needs that are identified. When you build affordable housing, you can often get criticism that the housing that you are building is not environmentally friendly. It's very hard to build environmentally friendly housing, and it's very expensive, and that kind of comes into contradiction with affordable housing. You can get a lot of pushback about where you locate affordable housing. You can get pushback that it's not near enough to schools and essential services that the people who may live there may need. So there's a lot of conflicts within affordable housing, sort of situations where it become, you can sometimes get very disillusioned because you say, enemy, and the perfect is the enemy of the good, or whatever that phrase is. And so when you hear critiques about your work, you feel like you're developing affordable housing, you hear critiques about your work that it's not perfect enough, it can get very disheartening. And I think there have been many times where I've just said, I don't want to do this work anymore, it's very thankless, or it's still not hitting the mark. And I think the concept of widening the circle of concern is something that really helps me to maintain optimism, because it's more about a journey of continuing to try to seek improvement in the work. And so we may continue to fall short and be imperfect every single time, but if you just can develop a practice of openness to inclusion and openness to making something more accommodating to more people, it's been a reassuring concept for me.
Absolutely. Can I ask you a quick follow-up? So, just because I'm curious, like, were you raised as a United Universalist? So was this always sort of there and part of that? Or was this something that you sort of increasingly felt drawn to as you had these sort of setbacks, critiques, this sort of?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that I was drawn to later in life. I was raised, both of my parents were raised as Catholics, but were very disinterested in raising us as Catholics, and chose not to practice as adults. But we attended a Lutheran church, was very involved in that, and I definitely see that that faith taking me to this work initially, but I think the concepts I've learned and embraced and thought about in adulthood through my practice at the Unitarian Church have really helped me mature my ideas around how I would like to do this work.
Awesome, thank you.
I wonder if you could share a story about some of the people you tried to help, their struggles, and also some of the pushback you got from critics on the outside looking in at what you do.
Yes, so Maggie Walker Community Land Trust is focused on affordable homeownership. And it's an interesting model because it's communally owned housing. It's single family, we own many single family homes throughout the region, but the people who purchase them from us do not have the ability to sell the homes for market rate. They can only sell them for a small amount of appreciation. And the reason is that we want to create a perpetual pool of affordable housing. And we want each person who purchases one of the homes to finally be able to become a homeowner, and then to also graduate and move on to a new homeownership opportunity outside the community land trust. But we want that opportunity to remain for the next person. And because housing has become so expensive, that's really become limited in our ecosystem. But there's actually a lot of criticism about that limited equity model. And so I think some of the pushback we do get is about the model itself and the limited equity nature of it. We just sold a home for the first time in the Carytown neighborhood. We have not, the home is valued well over $300,000, and we were able to sell it for $170,000 to someone who is a custodian at a local school and is, for the first time in his life, becoming a homeowner at 55. And so, to me, that is, that is something that is very impactful to me as a reason for doing this work. But there is some criticism that it's not fair to him, for example, that the equity when he goes to sell a home will not 100% be his. And so I think that there's this tension between the collective good that the Community Land Trust is trying to do and the individual benefit that folks want to see. And we are really trying to balance those two things. We don't want to erase the individual benefit that people accrue from homeownership, but we want to have it be more balanced so that that benefit doesn't go to just one person.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So when a homeowner does that, do they know up front that when they go, if they go to resell the house, that their equity is, okay?
Though the mechanism by which we do it is actually even part of the pushback that we receive, because it's done through a legal structure which is a ground lease. And so the Community Land Trust owns the land, and kind of like a condominium, the homeowner owns the home. And it's that legal agreement, that ground lease, that says when you go to sell this home, these will be the terms by which you sell it. And it is really important that before someone buys a home, they fully understand what they're getting into, because there are many exploitative real estate purchasing options out there, and we would never want to be considered one of them. So we want to really make sure people go in eyes wide open and understand what it is and isn't. But the fact that you don't own the land underneath your home in this situation is very suspect to some people. And so we do have to spend a lot of time trust building and helping people understand why we're doing that. This notion, I think what it really forces people to do is to think about homeownership differently, because we have these 75 homes currently around the region, and that will grow. And these are places where you can be a homeowner and there is a tremendous amount of stability there. If you get into trouble as a homeowner, which you have 30 years to get into trouble and then some, right? Life's ups and downs don't stop just when you purchase the home. But we will be there with you through that entire period of time. And if you fall on hard times and are unable to maintain homeownership, we are going to be there to support you. And this collective will be there to support you. And so we really try to describe the benefits and the definition of homeownership in a broader way.
It sounds like,
So-
please go ahead.
You have more of an ongoing relationship than the one that builds the homes.
Habitat for Humanity?
Yes.
Yeah, they sort of give that house up and.
That's right. And we do a lot of work with Habitat for Humanity. There are some of their homes that they will actually put into our community land trust. And this critique I describe of our model is a critique that Habitat has of us, right? Because they say, we want to see this individual family that we put into this home receive all the benefit from this home. And we say, well, in this market, that's a $200,000-$300,000 benefit that you're accruing to one person. Could we somehow spread that out over more people over the generations? And so that is Habitat is one of our greatest partners, and actually considered creating a community land trust themselves before we were created in 2015. But it doesn't come without ideological differences. And I think that's another thing that I have come to understand is these solutions we have are very imperfect. And it still doesn't mean that they shouldn't be pursued. Like, as I've learned what a community land trust is and isn't, what it can be, what it can't be, I still think that there is benefit there. And I think it's also just a thought-provoking way to think about how can we structure a more equitable housing market. And this could perhaps be part of a longer-term solution for those kind of things.
But it seems like the culture of home ownership and private property in America runs into conflict with what you're describing, the collective side, where people share benefits.
That's right. And so one of the terms that I have learned recently that I really like is prefigurative, and someone called our work prefigurative, meaning that we are practicing a alternative way to think about housing. And you know, everyone always talks about home ownership is the primary way you build wealth in this country. That is, why do we need to build private wealth to that degree? I'm of the opinion, and you know, this is a very, these are political beliefs, but I'm of the opinion it's because we don't have a sufficient social safety net to not necessitate private wealth to be the only way you can assure yourself of not falling into debt around healthcare or be unable to take care of yourself
Is
in
that
retirement.
Is that a faith question for you? The social safety net and this collective?
Yeah,
mindset?
absolutely. So one of my heroes is the Reverend William Barber at the Poor People's Campaign. And so yes, absolutely, I see that in this context. And I think that the Community Land Trust is a more supportive way to think about homeownership and what it could be.
Who oversees the land trust part? Like, as you, is there like a board of directors? Is there?
Yes.
'Cause I think it would be a trust thing.
Exactly.
Majorly with the homeowners and
You're
the
right.
landowners.
You're right, and so one of the
Managers.
key requirements to operate a land trust is that your board has a significant amount of homeowners on it, because it should be control, it is community control. And so the requirement is that 1/3 of your board be controlled by homeowners, and so 1/3 of our board members are homeowners, but I would really like to see that be at least a majority, because I think, to your point, around trust.
Yeah.
And that has come up in community meetings where we've described the model, and they say, okay, you're saying, the land is held in trust, but who controls the trust?
Right.
And so I think that is really important.
So, are there sort of land trusts outside of Richmond? Like, I wonder if you could say a bit about, like, the Maggie Walker Land Trust in particular as like a culture and its own ethos in relationship to some of these other movements.
Right. Yeah, so the land trust movement in the United States began in the Civil Rights era. It began it was actually right near Habitat's origins in southern Georgia in the late 1960s. Both of these movements were growing up at the same time, and they were both faith-based. And they kind of took different approaches, but still had very similar concepts. The Community Land Trust movement went to Israel and learned about kibbutz living and structures, and that is where they found their inspiration. And they were focused on Black rural farmers and collective ownership of farmland as a way to address sharecropping. And they, over time, grew that concept into an idea around farming, collective ownership of farmland and collective ownership of housing. And so now there are over 300 community land trusts around the country. We are pretty new. There are only 3 in Virginia, one in Charlottesville, and one that's statewide. And we've grown very quickly. Most community land trusts are very small, 10 units. And we are 75 and have a couple of hundred other units in the pipeline. And it's interesting because I think one of the main reasons why that is because we were conceived by what I call grass tops. So the nonprofit community, the banking community. Our founder was really the president of the Richmond Association of Realtors. So these are decision makers, community development decision makers in Richmond, as opposed to most community land trusts, which are very grassroots, like a neighborhood, a small group of people coming together, wanting to have control of land in their neighborhood.
Interesting.
And so that makes it difficult for us to then make sure we are continuing to connect with neighborhoods and communities. Because we were created in a more technocratic way, or a more corporate way, yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? So given the sort of faith roots of community land trusts, and given this sort of interesting model in Richmond, are there ways in which the sort of community land trust culture and faith intersect differently? I don't want to presume tension, but like, because it is like not a neighborhood of people banding together for communal care in these sort of smaller models, does that end up looking different? For you or for the whole, I mean, as you feel comfortable answering.
Yeah, I mean, our board, not in a way that was intentional or explicitly sought out, but our board is comprised of several people who come to this work through their faith and their belief system, much like Habitat. And so, that may be people who see a calling that is in general around serving others or philanthropy and charitable work. But that's definitely in existence in Richmond's Community Land Trust. I'm trying to think about our connections to religious communities in the region, and they really aren't that strong, I would say. And I think maybe you would have seen a different evolution of that if it had been more of a grassroots organization. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I'm just compelled by this model. It seems like it really runs against so many things that Americans hold dear. If I own my property and I control my destiny, I can sell it at my price, I can do what I want on my property. But what you're describing is a collective or communal approach. And I'm just thinking about, from the point of view of the individual homeowner, like you said earlier, the person wants to buy it and maybe sell it at a market rate, but they can't do that. They have to believe in this communal model. And it seems to me like there's a lot of clues for this sort of social model of support and community development in the Bible that run contrary to what we've developed in America at least, maybe all over in the West, as this individual self-determination. And I'm wondering if you could speak more into that. It seems like the people that would be attracted to this model are already connected to a community of care like this, or they want to be deeper involved in a community of care, such that they would even dedicate the sale of their home or the proceeds to continuing this community of care. And that seems like a big ask.
Right.
For a lot of people. Can you
Right.
tell us a story of somebody who really kind of maybe came into that? Like, it's like, you know, I really like this model. I think this is how America ought to be. This is what my faith is telling me to do. Or maybe the opposite, somebody who said like, no, I don't want it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I will just sort of lay all the cards out on the table. One of the big dichotomies we have is along racial lines.
Mm-hmm.
So we started to do this work, and we had an income maximum. You know, we were selling these homes not only below market but below cost, and we were putting, you know, money in to bring these down to these low prices, and you had to earn no more than X amount of money to buy them. And a lot of young white households were purchasing them. And we had a hope that affordable housing that was built would allow households of color to have a more easier access to homeownership. There were plenty of young white households that income qualified and were purchasing them, and that was great. And a lot of those families, primarily we worked initially in the Randolph neighborhood of Richmond, and many of those families in surveys or conversations have said, I feel really good about how I haven't contributed to gentrification of this neighborhood with my purchase, and I really like that I can connect my purchase of my home, which I needed a home. I wanted something in the neighborhood I wanted it in. I wanted a quality home, and you gave all those things to me. I also needed something I could afford. All the boxes have been checked, and then on top of that, I felt like I was contributing to this larger thing. Now, on the other hand, we've spent a lot of time making sure that households of color also have had a good opportunity to purchase our homes, and we've had a lot of success with that through lots of different measures we've taken. A lot of those individuals, when they are surveyed, say this was the only home I could afford. You're selling a home for $150,000 in a community where market home is $300,000. Did I want to not have my full equity? Like, no. Like, I'm a struggling individual, and I'm trying to get into the middle class, and this was my option. And so I think I now have to kind of reconcile, like, is that okay to have these different narratives of the people who are finding this a benefit? Can we still reconcile all of that and say this is a good model? And this is surveys we've done fairly recently, so I'm still really kind of grappling with that. And you know, every person has a different way they come to this program and needing it or wanting it. I don't think that there are that many people that are electing to do this. I think that is, I think we are often an option of last resort, and I don't know how to reconcile that.
It's tough.
It seems like where the rubber really hits the road with this is when people are ready to sell.
Yeah.
So how many families have sold, and how did that whole negotiation go?
Yeah, so we're pretty young. Our first home was sold in 2017. But we've resold 6 homes, so 6 families have moved on. And the way we track sort of that measure of success is, did they go on and were they able to buy a fee simple home?
Right.
Not were they able to buy $1 million home, but were they able to move up the ladder? If you think about homeownership as a ladder, I would argue that the first 3 or 4 rungs are gone right now, right? They
Yeah.
don't
That's
exist.
right.
And so we kind of think of ourselves as just reinserting one of those rungs of a ladder. And so those 6 households, 5 of them moved on to fee simple home ownership. And they moved for the reasons all people move, a job, and some of them moved because they were looking and they knew, now I can buy this other home, and so now is the time to get out and go to something else. And then the 6th, she moved into another one of our homes, a larger one, because her family had grown. And so it has been a positive experience, I would say, for those 6. And that is the general, across the country, the general trend for community land trust is our homeowners stay in the homes for a slightly shorter period of time than the average person stays in a home.
Okay.
Because this is supposed to be this starter home, this missing rung.
I'm just curious, is it okay if I
Yeah,
ask a
please.
follow-up?
Yeah.
How much wiggle room is there, though, for them to try to get the top
There's no
dollar
wiggle
for the
room.
improvements they've made to the house?
There's no wiggle room.
Okay,
So,
okay, that's good.
we even have in there, if you need to make improvements to your house, if you're making an improvement that would significantly increase the value, you need to come to us and ask us first, because we may not approve it.
Right,
Or you at least better know that you're not gonna make that back. That's a, personal choice you're making
Yeah.
to spend your money that way. And that hasn't really been an issue, but the way we structure the resale price is we say, we're going to tag the home value to median incomes in the area. So that if the median incomes increase 2% every year, which is generally what they've done, your home is gonna increase in value 2% each year.
nice.
And so, many of us who are homeowners have seen 10, 20, 30% increases over the last few years. But on average, that's not average. But probably, if you looked at a much longer period of time, 3-4% would be a rate of appreciation a lot of us see in our homes. So this is making it down at 2%. So that's sort of the trade-off you're seeing in these kind of homes.
So it's not operating on any kind of free market value? I mean, it's totally
completely-
AMI
It is,
based?
yes, and that is intentional to
Yeah.
say,
No, that's
we-
just amazing.
it doesn't matter what is happening in the market.
Right.
And I would argue
Right.
that what is happening in the market is devoid of reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
so
I
I
agree.
I'm not interested in
Right.
replicating that or marking
Right,
to
right, right,
that.
right.
There are structures where you can mark to
Yeah.
that, peg your model to
Yeah.
the market, but I think it's,
Yeah.
doesn't have a lot of
It's not
value.
sustainable either.
Well, and it's interesting to think about, because I was thinking about the gentrification question, as somebody who moved into a neighborhood and then has watched it
Yes.
sort of horrifically gentrify in the last
Right.
7 years that we've been in the home. And we very intentionally didn't fix our sidewalk for it, right? We were trying to be like there are small things that we can do, but just the nature of our bodies being in that house changed the way people thought they could come, oh, we can come to the neighborhood, but then maybe they've asked us are you scared to live here? And we're like, what do you mean that we live with black neighbors? No, this was their neighborhood. But so by not tagging it that way, you sort of circumvent all of what gentrification tries to do, which is jack up the
Right.
the
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Right, and so, you asked about a story, I'm thinking about, we have, a woman who bought a home on 23rd Street in Churchill,
Yep.
heart of Churchill,
Yeah.
for $165,000. The home is valued, I think, at $380, something like that. And when she went into the home, another neighbor came to her and said, "You're the only other Black person that I know of that lives in these surrounding blocks anymore." And, that made them feel really great that there was, and I love the idea that on that block in Churchill, no matter what happens to that market, whether it becomes, Seattle or whatever it becomes in the future, there will always be a home on that block for someone earning roughly 80% of the median income. And so that makes me feel like if we just do this in a few places, we have 20, 30 homes in Churchill, and they're indistinguishable from their neighbors. That sales price is kind of not known to the outside world that they bought that home at that steep discount. But those homes will always be places where middle-income people can still afford to live in Churchill and in other neighborhoods around the region.
That's awesome.
Do you have any inspection system so that they keep the houses up in shape, or?
Yeah, so we have the right to go and do that. And so if we started to have some concerns, because we want to make sure that value is retained, because we want it to be sold again and continue to be this asset. And so we have not instituted or have not utilized that right that we have to do inspection. We're trying to only do it when we have a concern, because it is invasive and it reinforces this idea that you aren't true homeowners.
Yeah.
We have had to enforce the rule that we have that you can't rent this thing out. Someone alerted us to the fact that one of our homes was on Airbnb.
Oh.
And that's not the point, right, of the situation. So we had to reach out to that person and say, you're in violation of the agreement. You can't use it this way. The point of this program is to provide people with homeownership. And so we keep track of those kind of things to try. That's more of a concern of mine right now is residency. And I think all of our homes are brand new since we're new. I think over time we may want to be more diligent about making sure a roof is replaced in 20 years and so forth.
Was the person that was doing the Airbnb living there and just using it as an Airbnb while they?
I don't believe so. I believe they had a change in their life circumstances where they now had a partner, and so they could live at the partner's house.
Yeah, I was just curious.
I don't think it was done maliciously. I think it just really didn't kind of occur to them that this was
We can do this, yeah.
right.
But that's part of the narrative that everybody wants to
Yes.
maximize their advantage.
Right.
However you think of that in a capitalist society, like, oh, wait, I could stay with him? Sure, why wouldn't I rent out my other
Right.
place?
Mhm.
Because you're living in a capitalist society, so that's what we reward.
That's how-
But you're kind of going against the tide with that.
Right.
Asking people to think of the collective and the rules and the structure that supports poor people. But if you're poor coming in and you get a break and like you say, you move up to the middle class, why wouldn't you maximize your advantage?
Right. Yeah, home ownership is, and even for the many of the families that buy our homes, home ownership is a way to maximize personal wealth. There are a lot of other benefits people have talked about. Now that I'm a homeowner, people think of me differently.
Yeah.
And there's such a tremendous, and I know this like personally, just such a tremendous feeling like I've accomplished this, I have like legitimacy, I have, ascended, ascendancy. So I think that's an intangible benefit that I like to think we are able to support with people.
Do people have to ask you before they sell their homes? What if they want to have their child inherit?
Yes, so the homes are inheritable, and if your child is over income, they can, so the lease, this ground lease is 99 years. So let's say you lived in the home for 75 years and you passed away, which is pretty unlikely. And then your child, who was very wealthy but wanted to live in the home, because they'd have to live in it, right? They can't have it
Right.
as a second home
Right.
or a rental, but they choose to live in it, and they're over income, they cannot renew that lease, which you could have renewed. It's a 99-year renewable
Right.
lease, so they just can't renew the
So
lease.
you can have it for 24 years.
Right, right, and
Gotcha.
then we would say, your time is up and this now has to come back and be given to an income qualified person. But if they are income qualified, then they can renew the lease and be on their own 99-year renewable lease. And we do have many seniors who have purchased the homes, purchased for the first time in their lives, as seniors, as retirees.
Go ahead.
Is it okay if I
Yes,
just-
please, go ahead.
I'm just so totally captivated by this whole thing, and I'm thinking about, so there's just, it feels like this model is just, could just be so expansive in so many ways. And I'm thinking about how have you all considered issues of, sustainability? And especially with like heating and, air conditioning and the energy efficiency of the homes and also the land. And just, I don't know, like, and how that kind of, holding that with wanting to keep things affordable.
Right.
And yet there's a great opportunity here too.
Right.
To demonstrate a lot of things
Right.
In how to do homeownership in a way that
Wow,
is
right.
really demonstrating, I don't know, like, dare I say, kingdom values,
Yes, so I get a lot of pushback, particularly from my staff, that we don't do more to create very environmentally sustainable and energy efficient homes. We do some, but not much, and that's purely a cost reason. I get pushback that we should do more fully accessible homes because so many of our homeowners have sometimes someone in their family, but not someone in their family, someone who visits them as frequently as family does who has accessibility needs. And we all can have accessibility needs at all types of times in our life, not just when we're seniors. And I get pushback about creating larger home sizes because you have families that are multi-generational or different compositions of families. And so these are those kind of decisions where I'm just like, yeah, if wishes were fishes, we'd do it all, but I do think we need to keep pushing on that. And so we are taking these baby steps. One of our projects is called an agrihood, which is an agricultural neighborhood. So it's a neighborhood centered around a farm. And we're doing this off of Route 1 in Chesterfield. And it's a collaboration with 2 other nonprofits, and it would be a community land trust development with this farmland within it. And there we will do hopefully extremely environmentally focused housing, and I think that will be a good test for us to get comfortable with it, see we can absorb that kind of risk. And then with the fully accessible homes too, we have a few projects that we're undertaking with that, and I hope we can get comfortable with that. Like I said, every single home we develop, we sell at a loss, and so we just have to be a fundraising machine. And how long can we do that? Inevitably, I don't know. I mean, that's much of philanthropy, that's what it is. So maybe we can do it inevitably. We talk about maybe offsetting that by doing projects where we sell half the units at market rate, and that's our source of funding. I don't know how to answer those things, but I do hope we will continue to kind of push the envelope on those.
Okay, quick question for you, Gwen. Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Are kingdom values at odds with American values?
Oh, big time.
In this
Totally.
context?
Sorry.
As she's describing.
Don't get me started.
Tell me more about kingdom values and why they're at odds with American values, the way she's describing what they're doing to, make housing affordable. What are
I feel like
kingdom-
I'm having my general ordination exam.
Welcome back to the Did you miss the GOEs? Did you miss them?
I'm intrigued by that, kingdom values.
I mean, I think they would be about where kingdom values are values where what I do leads to mutual flourishing of all people, and what I do doesn't have to be mean that I get mine at the cost of you not getting yours.
Yeah.
That where it's not a zero-sum game, and we what we do leads to totally I'm feeling on the spot, sorry.
No, I know what you're saying.
But
Leads to the flourishing of all,
yeah, I mean that's right.
because that's what Jesus would want.
That's exactly.
I think
Can I
that
ask one?
there's a self-givingness
Yeah.
to anything that we.
Well, I want to ask one sort of question along that lines, which is, have you ever been in a situation, either with the Maggie Walker Land Trust or in your previous positions, where, not just your faith, but faith as an issue bubbled up in the conversation explicitly, or is that just never? I mean, you said, for example, the board, you have a lot of people who happen to have come there through their faith, which you know. So I'm just wondering if, kingdom values is a very Christocentric
Right.
particular value system. Like, are there ever time? But there's Tikkun Olam and these. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say not. I have been in this work for now 21 years and not that frequently.
Interesting.
I think that the affordable housing industry has become very professionalized. And I think in past decades, it was much more grassroots, and maybe you would have seen that type of philosophy coming through. But the way to develop affordable housing requires a lot of different expertise, a lot of it financial expertise, and as a result, you have people like me with advanced degrees figuring it out and doing it. And I think that much of the complexity of it is not necessary. It's very, it's almost needlessly complex, and it really eliminates individuals' ability to not only do it in their own neighborhoods, but to debate it with people who want to do it in their neighborhoods. So when communities are approached about projects, the technicality of it is so significant that when they have questions, when they have concerns, there's a really big divide, and it's hard to have a conversation about it.
So it almost it shuts down the experience. Can I ask one quick follow-up question? Is in sort of the degrees that are required, is there ever an ethics class involved?
Say more about
Like,
that.
Well, in
In the degrees.
in the degrees themselves, is there ever an ethics class you have to take? You have medical ethics. for
No,
example.
no. I went
I think that's
to business school.
Yeah.
0.0% is about ethics, and my business classes were all about financial instruments and the stock market, and again, yes, very technical skills, and it was just a foregone conclusion that the point of this work was to maximize profit. That is the
So you're using the
biblical,
degree
that
even
is
against.
the biblical underpinning for the degree that I pursued.
Awesome. Well, I think you have been so generous with your time. I Dave will close us out in prayer in a minute, but I just want to thank all of you who have joined us in person and online, and can we all give Erica? And really quickly, this is my plug for you to remember that we are here and we will be back in January. So on Wednesday, January 18th, we will be having another faith and culture conversation, this time on incarceration justice. So that will be at 7 p.m. And we will be joined by Reverends Lauren Ramseur and Ashley Diaz-Mejias. They are the co-pastors of the Voices of Jubilee. It's a community of incarcerated youth, returning citizens, former prison guards, and all those longing for an embodied faith and the liberative word of the gospel. Through worship, singing, community building, and pastoral care, they seek to accompany incarcerated youth in their detention. Through advocacy with their legal team and partnering with others to transform our justice system, they work towards healing, liberation, and the transformation of our community and justice system. So again, Wednesday, January 18th at 7. I hope you guys will all join us in the new year. So.
All right. Let us pray. Life is short. We don't have much time to gladden the hearts of those who walk this way with us. So be swift to love and make haste to be kind. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, that was.
And go blue.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erica. That was
Thank
so,
you.
so
Thank you.
wonderful.
That was
great.
really.
Well, I mean,
interesting.
so I will just say, like,
I didn't.
I knew your answer was probably going to be no about ethics.
Oh.
So
Interesting.
my husband worked for like the
Oh,
writing
yeah.
center.